The sky above Beijing turned white at exactly 6:47 in the morning. Not the white of clouds or sunrise, but the white of a star being born. For 3 seconds, 12 million people looked up and saw something beautiful. Then they were gone. Not dead, gone. The heat was so intense that human bodies did not burn or melt. They simply stopped existing, turned to vapor and ash. In the time it takes to blink dot, the seraphim had arrived. Their ships hung in the atmosphere like frozen lightning. Vast crystalline structures that seemed to be made of solidified fire. They had no windows, no visible engines, no markings. They simply existed, impossibly large, impossibly bright, impossibly there. Within 6 hours of the first strike, Lagos, São Paulo, Moscow, and 17 other cities had joined Beijing in oblivion. 3 billion human beings died before the sun set on that first day. Governments tried to respond. They launched missiles. They sent fighter jets. They fired everything they had. It did not matter. The seraphim absorbed nuclear weapons like an ocean absorbs raindrops. The energy simply disappeared into their crystalline hulls, and when enough had been collected, they sent it back. The military bases that had launched the attacks became new glass craters. Perfect circles of melted earth that would glow for 1,000 years. Then came the message. Every screen on Earth, every radio, every device capable of receiving a signal suddenly spoke with the same voice. It was not harsh or threatening. It was gentle, almost kind, like a parent explaining something simple to a child. "Rejoice," the voice said. "Your suffering ends in light. We are the Seraphim Collective. We have traveled the stars for 10 million years, bringing the gift of purification to all who dwell in darkness. Fire cleanses. Fire transforms. Fire lifts the soul from the prison of flesh. Do not resist. Do not hide. Come into the light and know peace." The message repeated in every human language, over and over, a lullaby of extinction. Some people believed it. Cults formed within days, millions of humans walking willingly into the burning zones, arms raised, faces turned toward the sky. They called themselves the Ascended, and they died smiling. Others went mad. They rioted. They killed each other. They descended into chaos that made the Seraphim's work easier. And some simply sat down and waited for the end. Too tired and too broken to do anything else. But not everyone gave up deep beneath the Swiss Alps. In a bunker that had been built to survive nuclear war, a group of survivors gathered. They called themselves the Erebus Council, named after the ancient Greek god of darkness. There were scientists and soldiers, priests and philosophers, leaders of nations that no longer existed. They had been chosen not because they were the most powerful, but because they were the most capable of thinking clearly when everything was falling apart. Dr. Yuki Tanaka stood at the head of the table, her hands shaking as she looked at the data on her screen. She was a physicist, 63 years old, and she had spent her entire life studying the fundamental forces of the universe. She had helped develop the fusion reactors that powered half of Earth's cities. Now those cities were ash, and her life's work seemed like a joke. "The energy output is impossible," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Their weapons operate at temperatures higher than the core of our sun. Our best shields, our strongest materials, they mean nothing against heat like this. We cannot fight fire with fire. We would need something colder." General Marcus Webb stood by the door, his uniform torn and stained with soot. He had been in London when the Seraphim struck, had watched his wife and 2 daughters vanish in a pillar of white light. His eyes were empty, but his voice was steady. "Then we find something colder," he said, "or we die. Those are the only options." Father Eligas Volkov sat in the corner, his priest's robes hanging loose on a body that had not eaten in days. He had served God for 40 years, had believed with all his heart in divine mercy and love. Now he stared at the wall and saw nothing. "There is no God," he said quietly. "Or if there is, he has abandoned us to these demons. Perhaps we deserve it. Perhaps this is judgment." Dr. Amara Asay ignored the priest. She was bent over a table covered with strange, glowing fragments, pieces of a Seraphim drone that had been shot down over Kenya before the main fleet arrived. She was a xenobiologist, trained to study alien life, and she had never seen anything like the things spread out before her. "They are not demons," she said. "They are not gods. They are alive, but not like us. Their bodies are made of plasma, of superheated gas held together by magnetic fields. Their thoughts exist as patterns of energy. They have no flesh, no blood, no physical form as we understand it. They are fire, living fire." The room was silent for a long moment. Then a voice spoke, not from any of the humans, but from the speakers built into the walls. It was the consensus, the merged consciousness of millions of humans who had uploaded their minds to digital storage before the attack. They spoke with many voices blended into one, a chorus of the dead and the surviving. "We understand now," the consensus said. "They fear nothing because they have never faced absence. They have burned worlds for 10 million years, always running from the cold, always feeding on energy and heat. But we know something they do not. We know what it means to end, to stop, to become nothing." Dr. Tanaka looked up, a strange light in her eyes. "What are you suggesting?" "They brought fire. We will bring its opposite. Not cold in the simple sense, but true absence. The complete removal of all energy, all motion, all heat. Absolute zero. The end of thermodynamics itself. They have never faced it because they have spent eternity avoiding it. They burn worlds before the cold can touch them." General Webb straightened, and for the first time since London, something like hope crossed his face. "Can it be done?" Dr. Tanaka was already running calculations in her head, her mind moving faster than it had in years. "Maybe, theoretically, it would require technology we have never built, principles we barely understand. And the cost?" She trailed off, her face pale. "What cost?" Webb demanded. "I do not know yet. But nothing comes free. The universe always demands payment." Above them, through miles of rock and earth, the sky continued to burn. The Seraphim moved methodically across the planet, purifying city after city, continent after continent. They had done this 10,000 times before. They expected no resistance that mattered. They did not know that in the darkness below, humanity was learning to become something bleaker than fire. The first test was conducted in a sealed chamber a mile below the surface. Only 5 people were present: Tanaka, Webb, Asay, Father Volkov, and the consensus, speaking through a screen mounted on the wall. In the center of the chamber stood the entropy cage, a sphere of dark metal about the size of a human heart. Inside the sphere, invisible and waiting, were the quantum fields that would end everything they touched. So, or Nakamura, stood next to the device, dressed in simple white clothes. She had spent the past week in meditation, releasing her connections to the world one by one. Her fear was gone. Her hope was gone. Even her grief had faded to a distant echo. She felt light, as if she were already half disappeared. "You can still change your mind," Tanaka said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "We can find another way. We can wait for more volunteers." Sora shook her head. "There is no other way. And I am ready. I have been ready since Osaka." She placed her hand on the entropy cage and closed her eyes. The procedure was simple in theory, but impossible in practice for anyone who still clung to existence. She had to want to end. Not in the desperate way of suicide, not in the tired way of surrender, but in a pure and complete way, like a candle wanting to go out, like a river wanting to reach the sea and stop. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Sora's face changed. A peace came over her, so deep and so final that those watching felt tears come to their eyes without knowing why. She smiled. "I always wondered what silence sounded like," she whispered. The entropy cage activated. There was no explosion, no flash of light, no dramatic release of energy. Instead, there was simply an absence. A sphere of nothing expanded from the device, about 3 meters in diameter, and everything within that sphere stopped. The air stopped moving. The dust stopped floating. Light itself seemed to die at the edge of the zone, leaving a perfect circle of absolute darkness. Sora Nakamura was gone. Not dead, not destroyed. Simply absent, as if she had never existed. Tanaka was the first to speak. "It works," she said. Her voice was hollow. "God help us, it works." Father Volkov fell to his knees. He had lost his faith weeks ago, but now he felt something else, something colder and stranger. He had just witnessed a human soul choose non-existence. He had watched someone erase themselves from reality, and he understood that this was the weapon that would save them. "This is not salvation," he said. "This is something else entirely." "It is survival," Webb replied. "And right now, that is all that matters." The news spread through Erebus within hours. The Hollow Saints, those who had been training for this moment, received it with quiet acceptance. They had known what they were volunteering for. They had made their peace. Now they knew their sacrifice would not be in vain. Production of the entropy cages began immediately. The facilities beneath the Alps worked without stopping, building device after device, each one requiring a willing soul to operate. The Hollow Saints came forward in an endless stream, more volunteers than they could use. Young and old, rich and poor, from every nation and every walk of life. They did not see themselves as dying. They saw themselves as becoming something else, something that would end the enemy. Meanwhile, the Seraphim continued their purification. They had noticed the sudden silence from certain parts of the world, the bunkers and hiding places that had gone dark and quiet. They sent scouts to investigate. None of the scouts returned. In the crystalline chambers of the Seraphim command ship, Imperial 7 reported its concerns to the collective. It was one of the oldest Seraphim, a consciousness that had burned for 3 million years, and it felt something it had not felt in ages: uncertainty. "The mortals are doing something," it said. "They are not simply hiding. They are preparing. I have lost 17 scout units in the past 2 days. They simply stopped responding. Their life fires went dark." The collective considered this. Perhaps the mortals have developed new weapons. More nuclear devices, perhaps, or fusion bombs. No, those leave traces. Energy signatures, radiation, heat. These disappearances leave nothing. It is as if the scouts simply ceased to exist. The collective was silent for a long moment. In 10 million years, they had never encountered anything that could simply cease to exist. Energy could not be destroyed, only transformed. This was a fundamental law of the universe. The idea that something could simply stop was impossible. Continue the purification, the collective decided. Whatever the mortals are doing, it cannot stop us. We are eternal. We are fire. We are the light that burns away darkness. But Imperial 7 was not convinced. It had studied the mortals, had observed their brief and painful lives. It had seen something in their eyes that confused it. When the Seraphim burned their cities, the mortals did not just scream and run. Some of them stood still and watched. They stared at the fire with an expression that Imperial 7 could not understand. Now it understood. They had been recognizing something, seeing something they knew. They had been seeing the end. On Earth, the The first counterattack was launched from a hidden base in the Andes Mountains. A small ship, little more than a drone with a single hollow saint aboard, flew toward a Seraphim carrier hovering above what had once been Argentina. The saint's name was Jorge Mendez, and he had been a teacher before the invasion. He had taught mathematics to children who would never grow up. "I am ready," he said over the radio, his voice calm. "Tell them this is not revenge. Tell them this is simply what happens when fire meets the void." The entropy cage activated at the heart of the Seraphim carrier. For the first time in 10 million years, 40,000 Seraphim experienced something beyond their comprehension. One moment, they existed, their plasma bodies dancing with energy and thought. The next moment, there was nothing. Not death, not transformation, not transcendence. Just nothing. Their consciousness did not move on to another state. Their energy did not join a greater whole. They simply stopped. The carrier fell from the sky, a massive crystalline corpse, cold and dark and utterly inert. Across the planet, Seraphim paused in their purification. They felt the loss through the collective, felt the sudden absence where 40,000 minds had been. And for the first time in their long, long existence, they knew fear. What have the mortals done? The collective asked, and there was something in its voice that had never been there before. Pyril-7 answered. And its words were the beginning of the end for the Lords of Fire. They have remembered something we forgot. They have remembered that all things end, and they have learned to bring that ending with them. 3 weeks passed. The earth continued to burn. Australia was gone, transformed into a single vast desert of black glass. Europe was a patchwork of destruction, some cities still standing only because the Seraphim had not reached them yet. The Americas burned from coast to coast, great walls of fire moving across the land like slow waves. 5 billion humans remained alive, hiding in caves and bunkers and deep places where the light could not reach. In Erebus, Dr. Tanaka had not slept in 6 days. The walls of her laboratory were covered with equations, diagrams, and notes written in a hand that grew shakier with each passing hour. She had solved the theoretical problems. She understood how to build a weapon that could fight the Seraphim. But the solution horrified her. "It cannot be done with machines alone," she explained to the council, her voice rough from exhaustion. "The quantum coherence required is too precise, too delicate. A computer cannot maintain it. The calculations collapse without a guiding consciousness." General Webb leaned forward. "Then we use a person. Put someone in control of the weapon. You do not understand." Tanaka rubbed her eyes, searching for simpler words. "The device does not just need a controller. It needs a sacrifice. A human mind must choose to embrace the void, willingly and completely. Not suicide, not death. Something worse. The consciousness must want to become nothing, must accept absolute zero into itself. Only then will the quantum states align." The room was silent. Father Volkov, who had barely spoken since the first day, raised his head. "You are saying," he said slowly, "that someone must choose damnation. Not the damnation of hell and fire, but the damnation of non-existence. No afterlife. No continuation. Simply ending." "Yes," Tanaka said. "And they must choose it freely, with full understanding. Any hesitation, any doubt, and the device will not function." Dr. Asay stood by the window, looking at nothing. "How many? How many must make this choice?" "One per device. And we will need many devices to have any chance against the collective." The consensus spoke from the walls. "We will ask for volunteers. We will explain everything, hide nothing. And we believe that humans will step forward, because that is what humans do. They have always been willing to die for those they love. This is simply dying more completely. General Webb stood and walked to the center of the room. He was thinking about his wife, about his daughters, about the moment when they had looked at him with confusion and fear before the light took them. He had wanted to die with them. He'd been denied even that. "I will be the first," he said. "Test the weapon on me." Tanaka shook her head. "No, General. You are needed here. You are perhaps the only person who can coordinate what remains of our military forces. Your sacrifice would be a waste. Then who?" The answer came from an unexpected source. A young woman stepped through the door of the council chamber, her hair still singed from a fire she had escaped 3 days ago. Her name was Sora Nakamura, and before the invasion, she had been a poet living in Osaka. She had lost everyone. Her parents, her brother, her friends, the boy she had loved since childhood. She had walked through the burning ruins of her city and felt nothing, because there was nothing left inside her to feel. "I will do it," she said. "I have been looking for a reason to end. This is a better reason than most." The council stared at her. She was thin and pale, and there were burn scars on her arms. But her eyes were steady, and her voice did not shake. "You understand what this means?" Tanaka asked. "There will be nothing after. No heaven, no rebirth, no continuation of any kind. You will simply stop." Sora smiled, and it was the saddest smile any of them had ever seen. "I know. I think I have already stopped, really. My body just has not caught up yet. Let me do something useful with what is left." Over the following days, others came forward. Soldiers and civilians, young and old, from every nation and every background. They called themselves the Hollow Saints, and they trained in the deep chambers of Erebus, learning to quiet their minds, to release their attachments, to embrace the void. Some failed the training, their survival instincts too strong to overcome. Those who succeeded grew quieter and more peaceful with each passing day, like candles burning down to the end of their wicks. Meanwhile, Dr. Asay continued her study of the Seraphim. She had learned much from the drum fragments, but she needed more. She needed to understand not just their bodies, but their minds. "They are old," she reported to the council. "Older than we can really comprehend. Their collective memory stretches back 10 million years, to a time when humans did not exist, when Earth was covered in ice and primitive life. They have burned 10,000 species. They have never been stopped. Then how do we stop them?" Webb asked. "By giving them something new. They have never experienced true cold because they have always avoided it. They burn worlds before the cold can touch them. Their entire existence is built around the avoidance of entropy, of endings, of cessation. They are afraid." Father Volkov laughed, a harsh and bitter sound. "Afraid? Those monsters? They are gods of fire. They fear nothing." "No," Asay said. "They fear one thing. They fear what all things fear, if they are honest with themselves. They fear stopping. They fear the moment when the fire goes out and nothing comes after. They have spent 10 million years running from that fear, burning everything in their path so they never have to face it. But humans face it every day. We know we will die. We know we will end. It terrifies us, but we live with it. We have practice." The consensus spoke again, and there was something almost like wonder in its many-voiced tone. "That is our weapon. Not the device itself, but what we are willing to do with it. They cannot imagine a being that would choose to end itself to end them. It is beyond their understanding. It is the one thing in the universe they cannot predict or counter." Tanaka stood before a large screen showing the design of her creation. She called it the entropy cage, a sphere of exotic matter and quantum fields that would create a zone of absolute zero, of complete energy cessation. Everything within its radius would stop. Not die, not freeze. Stop. The atoms themselves would cease to move. Time would become meaningless. It was not death. It was something more final. How long until we can build the first one? Webb asked. 2 weeks. We have the materials. We have the knowledge. We have the volunteers. Tanaka paused. But we have not yet tested it. We do not know if it will work. Sora Nakamura stepped forward, her hollow eyes calm. Then test it. Test it on me. Let me be the first to bring them silence. Above them, unseen, a Seraphim scout ship passed over the Alps, its sensors probing the mountains. It detected nothing. The humans were too deep, too quiet, too still. The scout reported that the region was clear and moved on. It did not know that in the darkness below, the first Hollow Saint was preparing to teach the Lords of Fire what humans had always known, that all fires go out, that all light fades, that in the end, there is only the cold, and the cold is patient, and the cold does not care how bright you burned. The war changed after the fall of the first carrier. Before, it had been a slaughter, the Seraphim burning through humanity like fire through paper. Now it was something else. Now it was a hunt, and the Seraphim were no longer certain they were the hunters. Entropy cages fell on Seraphim positions across the globe. Each attack was small, a single ship or a hidden ground team, carrying a single Hollow Saint. Each attack claimed a single Saint's existence and erased thousands of Seraphim from reality. The mathematics were terrible but clear. Humanity had found a way to hurt. The invaders that the invaders could not counter. The Seraphim tried to adapt. They spread their forces thin, never gathering in large numbers, hoping to minimize their losses. But this made them vulnerable in other ways. Without concentrated force, they could not maintain the constant burning that had protected them for millions of years. Patches of Earth began to cool. Survivors crept out of their hiding places and looked up at skies that were no longer white with fire. In Erebus, General Webb coordinated the counterattack with cold precision. He had not slept more than 2 hours a night since the first successful strike. He did not need to. The faces of his wife and daughters floated before him whenever he closed his eyes, and their memory was all the fuel he needed. We have destroyed 37 carriers, he reported to the council. Approximately 1 million Seraphim have been neutralized. The collective is pulling back, concentrating their remaining forces in orbit. They know we cannot reach them there. Dr. Tanaka nodded. The entropy cages have limited range. We can launch them into low orbit, but no further. If they retreat beyond the moon, we have no way to follow. Then we have won, Father Volkov said. He sat in the corner as always, but something had changed in his eyes. He no longer looked empty. He looked haunted, which was somehow worse. We have driven them away. No, the consensus said. We have only paused them. The collective will not simply leave. They have never abandoned impurification in 10 million years. Their nature does not allow it. Dr. Asay stepped forward. She had continued her study of the Seraphim even as the war raged, and she had learned things that kept her awake at night. The consensus is right. The Seraphim cannot accept defeat. Their entire existence is built around the idea that they are eternal, that their fire will burn forever. If they admit that mortals, temporary beings like us, can stop them, their whole belief system collapses. They will do anything to avoid that. What does that mean for us? Webb asked. OSE. I pulled up a display showing the Sol system. The Seraphim fleet had gathered near Jupiter, a vast collection of crystalline ships orbiting the gas giant. They are building something, she said. We have detected massive energy signatures, far larger than any of their normal weapons. Based on the patterns, we believe they are constructing a stellar lance. The room went quiet. Tanaka's face went pale. What is a stellar lance? Webb asked. Danica answered, her voice barely above a whisper. A weapon designed to destabilize stars. They have used it before. According to records we have recovered from destroyed ships. When they encounter a species, they cannot burn directly. They burn their sun instead. The star goes nova, and everything in the system is destroyed. They would kill themselves as well, Volkov protested. No, the Seraphim can survive stellar events. They feed on that kind of energy. They would simply ride the shock wave to another system and continue their purification elsewhere. But everything in this system, every human on Earth, on Mars, on the colonies, would be gone. Webb slammed his fist on the table. How long do we have? Based on energy readings, 3 weeks. Maybe less. The despair in the room was almost physical. They had fought so hard, sacrificed so much, and now the enemy was simply going to burn the sun and end everything anyway. The hollow sinks, the entropy cages, none of it mattered if the Seraphim completed their weapon. But Tanaka was not despairing. She was thinking. Her mind, which had barely rested in weeks, was racing through calculations and possibilities. Finally, she looked up, and there was something terrible in her eyes. "There is a way," she said, "but you will not like it." She explained. The entropy cage was designed to create a local zone of cessation, limited in range but absolute in effect. But there was another possibility, a theoretical extension she had not shared because it seemed too horrible to consider. A device that did not simply create cessation, but propagated it, spreading through any connected energy system like a virus. The Seraphim Collective is not just a group of individuals, she said. It is a true hive mind. Every Seraphim is connected to every other through quantum entanglement, sharing thoughts, memories, and experiences. It is what makes them so powerful. But it is also a weakness. Explain, Webb said. If we could detonate an entropy cascade at the heart of their network, the cessation would not stay local. It would spread through the quantum links, jumping from mind to mind, ship to ship. Every Seraphim connected to the collective would experience instant cessation. Not just the ones near the device. All of them, everywhere in the galaxy. The room was silent. Even the consensus did not speak. "You are talking about genocide," Volkov said. "The complete extinction of an entire species." "Yes," Tanaka said. "That is exactly what I am talking about. Then we become them. We become the monsters who wipe out entire species." No. It was Dr. Asay who spoke, and her voice was hard. "We become the species that survived. The Seraphim have burned 10,000 civilizations. They were never going to stop. They were never going to show mercy. This is not revenge. This is surgery, removing a cancer from the universe." General Webb stood and walked to the window, looking out at nothing. He was thinking about his daughters, about the way they had laughed, the way they had held his hand when they were small. He was thinking about the billions of humans who had already died, and the billions more who would die if the stellar lance was completed. Can it be done? He asked. Yes, Tanaka said. We would need to get a ship into the heart of their fleet, close to their command nexus. The device would need to be carried by multiple hollow saints, working together to generate a cascade effect. They would need to... She paused, struggling to find the words. They would need to want ending more completely than any human has ever wanted anything. The quantum coherence required is beyond anything we have attempted. "I will go," said a voice from the doorway. They turned. It was Sora's sister, Yuki. She had survived the destruction of Osaka by chance, by being on a school trip to the mountains when the fire fell. She was 17 years old, and she had spent the past weeks training with the Hollow Saints, preparing for a sacrifice she had not been allowed to make. "I will go," she said again. "For Sora, for everyone. I will bring them the silence." Behind her, other Hollow Saints gathered. Dozens of them, young and old, all with the same peaceful, empty expressions. They had heard the conversation. They understood what was being asked. "We will go," they said together. "We will end them." General Webb looked at them, at these ordinary humans who had chosen to become something else, something the universe had never seen before. Beings who did not just accept death, but transcended it, becoming weapons made of absolute peace, of complete and willing cessation. "May God forgive us," Father Volkov whispered. The consensus replied, and its voice was gentle. "If there is a God, we believe it will understand. We are not choosing cruelty. We are choosing survival. And sometimes survival requires terrible things." The preparations began that night. The ship was ready within a week. And in the dark space near Jupiter, the Seraphim continued building their stellar lance, unaware that something colder than their fire was coming for them. The ship had no name. It was built for a single purpose and would never return, so no one saw the point of naming it. It was small and dark, designed to absorb rather than reflect light, invisible against the black of space. Inside, 12 hollow saints sat in a circle, their eyes closed, their minds already halfway to the void. Yuki Nakamura sat at the center, the entropy cascade device resting in her lap like a sleeping child. She was thinking about her sister Sora, about the peaceful smile on her face in the moment before she ceased to exist. She was thinking about her parents, about the flames that had taken them while she watched from a mountain path miles away. She was thinking about all the things she would never do, never see, never feel, and she was letting them go. The ship crossed the orbit of Mars, then the asteroid belt, moving silently through the dark. The Seraphim sensors were focused on Earth, watching for attacks from the surface. They did not think to look behind them. In Erebus, the Council watched the ship's progress on a screen that showed only a small dot moving through an endless black. "How long until they reach the target zone?" Webb asked. 4 hours, Tanaka replied. "If they are not detected." Father Volkov stood by the wall, his hands clasped as if in prayer, though he no longer knew what he was praying to. "And if they are detected? Then the Seraphim will destroy them, and we will have lost our only chance." Tanaka's voice was flat. She had not slept in 3 days. "The stellar lance will be completed in 18 hours. There is no margin for error." The hours passed in silence. The dot continued to move. On Earth, the sun rose and set as it always had, indifferent to the fate being decided millions of miles away. Humans looked up at the sky and wondered if they would see another sunrise. Most did not know about the ship or its mission. They only knew that something was happening, that the fires had stopped, that a strange quiet had fallen over the world. In the ship, Yuki opened her eyes. "We are close," she said. Her voice was soft, as if speaking from a great distance. "I can feel them. The Seraphim. Their thoughts are like a fire in my mind, burning so bright." The other saints nodded. They could feel it too, the overwhelming presence of the collective, a mind that had existed for 10 million years and encompassed billions of individual consciousnesses. It was vast and ancient, and utterly convinced of its own righteousness. It believed it was bringing salvation. It believed the fire was mercy. And in 18 hours, it would burn the sun and end everything. The ship slowed as it approached the Seraphim fleet. The crystalline vessels hung in space like a field of frozen stars, each one burning with internal fire. At their center was the command nexus, a ship larger than the others, its hull pulsing with the gathered consciousness of the entire collective. "This is as close as we can get," the pilot said. She was a former naval officer named Sarah Chun, and she had volunteered for this mission knowing she would not survive. "The Saints will need to go the rest of the way on their own." Yuki stood. Around her, the other Saints rose as well, their movements slow and deliberate. They did not speak. They did not need to. Their minds had become one in the weeks of training, Unified by their shared willingness to end, they transferred to a smaller shuttle, barely more than a metal box with an engine. It would not survive the journey either, but it did not need a dot. As they crossed the final distance to the command nexus, Yuki activated the communication system. She wanted the Seraphim to hear. She wanted them to understand. "You came bearing Inferno," she said, and her voice carried across all frequencies, reaching every Seraphim in the fleet. "We understood. Fire is easy. Fire is passion and fury, and a desperate need to prove you exist." The Seraphim heard, and for a moment they paused their work on the stellar lance. Who was this mortal speaking to them? "But we humans have sat with something you never could. We have buried our children. We have watched our loves grow cold. We have stood at graves and known, truly known, that one day we would lie in the dark forever." Imperial 7, the Ancient One who had first sensed something wrong, felt a chill run through its plasma body. It tried to order the destruction of the shuttle, but something was wrong. The weapons would not fire. The targeting systems would not lock. "You called it weakness," Yuki continued. "You were wrong. It was preparation." The shuttle reached the command nexus. The Hollow Saints linked their minds together, 12 becoming one. Their collective will focused on a single, terrible desire: to stop, to end, to bring silence to beings who had never known anything but the roar of flames. "You brought us fire," Yuki said. "We bring you what waits after every fire dies." The entropy cascade activated dot. It was not like the smaller devices. This was not a sphere of absence expanding outward. This was something else entirely. A wave that moved not through space, but through thought, through connection, through the quantum links that bound every Seraphim to every other. Imperial 7 felt it first. One moment it existed, ancient and vast, filled with the memories of 3 million years. The next moment, those memories were fading, draining away like water from a cracked vessel. It tried to scream, but it had no voice. It tried to burn, but its fire was going cold. "We bring you the cold," Yuki said, and her voice was getting softer because she was fading too, becoming part of the void she had invited. "We bring you the quiet. We bring you the thing humanity has carried since we first looked up at the stars and understood that they, too, would someday go dark." The wave spread through the collective. Ship after ship went dark, their crystalline hulls falling cold and inert. Consciousness after consciousness winked out, not dying but simply stopping, ending in a way that the Seraphim had spent 10 million years trying to avoid. "We bring you the end," Yuki whispered. And then she was gone, and the 12 saints were gone, and the shuttle was gone, and in their place was only silence. The entropy cascade propagated at the speed of thought. Across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, Seraphim who had been in the middle of burning civilizations suddenly stopped. Their fires went out. Their minds went dark. They fell from the skies of alien planets like burning rain, except they were not burning anymore. They were cold. They were still. They were nothing. In Erebus, the screens showed what was happening. The signals from the Seraphim fleet cut out one by one, like candles being blown out by a wind that carried no warmth, no air, no anything at all. No one spoke. No one could. They had just witnessed the extinction of an entire species. A race that had existed for 10 million years. Ended in a matter of minutes by 12 human beings who had chosen to become the void. Finally, General Webb broke the silence. "It is done," he said. "We won." But Father Volkov shook his head. "We did not win. We survived. Those are different things." Months later, when the rebuilding had begun and the scars of the war were slowly healing, a ship arrived from another star system. It was not Seraphim. It was something else, beings of matter and flesh who had watched the war from afar and now came to meet the species that had ended the eternal flame. Their ambassador, a tall creature with too many eyes, met with the human delegation in the ruins of what had once been Geneva. It looked at the humans for a long time before speaking. "We have a question," it said. "The Seraphim burned 10,000 species before you. All of them fought back with fury, with desperation, with fire of their own. None of them succeeded. What made you different?" The human ambassador was a woman named Keiko Tanaka, Dr. Tanaka's granddaughter, who had lost her grandmother in the final months of the war. She thought about the question for a long time before answering. "We remembered what they forgot," she said. "That stars die. That fires go out. That everything, eventually, stops. They thought that made us weak. They never understood. It made us ready. It made us patient. It made us the thing that waits at the end of every light." The alien ambassador was silent for a moment. Then it bowed, a gesture that seemed to indicate respect, though perhaps also something else. Perhaps fear. "We will remember this," it said. "We will tell the others." The species that looked into the void and did not blink. It left, and the humans returned to their work, rebuilding their world, mourning their dead, carrying the memory of what they had done. They had survived. They had won. They had become something that no other species had ever been. Beings who could choose to end not just themselves but others, who could bring the void with them like a gift. The universe looked upon humanity with new eyes. Not admiration. Not gratitude, unease, because the other species understood now what humanity had always known. There was something bleaker than fire. There was something colder than death. There was the species that had looked into the void, and the void had looked back, and they had recognized each other. And in that recognition, something had changed. The humans did not talk about it much. They rebuilt their cities, had children, lived their lives. But sometimes, late at night, they would look up at the stars and remember. They would remember the fire that had come to burn them. They would remember the silence they had brought in return, and they would wonder, in the secret places of their hearts, what else they might be capable of. Now that they knew what they truly were, the void was patient. The void was forever, and humanity had learned to carry it with them.